This crowd comes to know have on this Western Shula tonight. The line of yeah, man, it's Jim.
It's a backpass with Ross on the mic. Talking for these stories, keeping vibes real tight. Legends and laughter, you know the drill. Backpass with Ride, football, better and chill. From SG to the region, we cover the game. Big names, small clubs, the passion's the same. Stories from the pitch and the ones untold. Backpass with Ride, where the beautiful game unfolds.
Welcome to Backpass with Ras, with your host Ras, bringing to you a brand new episode. And this is the first episode since Diwali. So I wish all Hindu listeners a happy Diwali, and my fellow Sikhs a happy Bandi Chor Divas to all my fellow Sikhs. So today's episode, a bit special. I've got with me a guest from Mumbai, India. So you can call this the Diwali special episode. It's none other than Mr. Dhananjay Rawal, who's representing a podcast in India called Calcio Charcha, which talks about Serie A football in Italy from India, which makes it very, very interesting. So welcome to the show, Dhananjay.
Thank you so much, Ras, to have us here. Really looking forward to having connected with you and speaking with you about not just Juventus, but the league at large. Very excited.
Okay, Dhananjay, first of all, well, I'm from the Indian diaspora, so of course I know about a little bit of India. I wouldn't say I know a lot. I wouldn't say I know extensively of what's going on in India. Most of our knowledge comes from watching Hindi films and, TV and whatever we get here. So my recollection of football coverage and in India in the 90s isn't that great. I don't remember much being spoken about football in the 90s. What was it like in India in that era?
Ras, to be honest with you, I think, India, as you're aware, we're obsessed with cricket here.
Yeah.
And that has always taken center stage with regard to the kind of coverage and the weight that the media pulls. But that said, football always, apart from club football, the World Cups and the Euros always had a certain pride of place on Indian television, and that's the time that we got a chance to see the showcase of talent, from around the world before you could start deciding what club or league you want to follow. And my recollection, vivid as it may be, has been from the early Italia 90s stage. That's when I started following football at large. Italia 90 being the home of Italy, showcasing maybe the stadiums at the time. If you guys remember the logo that Italia 90 had,
Yeah.
it was very memorable. That Italian team was very memorable as well. It had a certain energy. And I think that's really when I got plugged into the sport at large, following that team. That's when Roberto Baggio made his debut as a player. And this was at that point in time showcased on Doordarshan, as most of your Indian viewers might know, as you may know. Though that was the only space for us from a showcase perspective to kind of understand. We didn't have any streams as we do today. We didn't have the internet like we do today. We at least didn't use it like we do today. And, that said, you had about maybe at 12 o'clock at night, you had a little pre-game show, and that followed, the match itself. So you didn't really get plugged into players other than seeing what they could do on the pitch. You didn't get a showcase, or you didn't get like the stats that we have today, to understand what player is worth how much, what player comes with what stats. It was just in a very purist sense, just watching the beautiful game and then, taking away from it whatever you could interpret, in that moment in time. And I think that's really how, for me as a purist, that's really how we should really enjoy football. Today tech has taken over the game in such a big way that a lot of it is like the first filter when you're either following a player or a league. And yeah, for me, I just think when I go back to those days, it was very special. It was limited, but it was special.
True.
Just to answer your question, the 90s were um, purely on Doordarshan for the World Cups and the Euro. Cricket was largely center stage.
Okay, so no coverage of even the English Premier League or Serie A on a weekly basis?
Oh no, Russ, the early 90s certainly not. But then there was an influx of channels that started coming. Star came into India through a channel called Prime Sports. Though, funnily enough, it was early to mid 90s when there used to be a Gillette World Show on Doordarshan, which used to air every Saturday or Sunday or just Sunday. And that's when I'd get a plug of, the club scene. But at that point in time, Ras, the Premier League wasn't what it is, the Moneyball monster that it is today.
Yeah.
At that point in time in the 90s, it was the Italian league that was the
Yes.
biggest league. And,
Yes.
that was the league to match up to. That was the point of reference. That's where all the global superstars were. That's where the money was. That's where the brand game was. And I think Star Prime Sports in their initial phases, they basically, what they did was they kind of showcased the Italian league, towards the end of the 90s. If I'm not mistaken, this was 97 through 99, maybe. I could be
Okay.
wrong.
Okay.
But that's when, there was a little bit of exposure. Before that, Russ, for me, it was really following, little snippets on through cable television. There used to be this Italian channel called Rai, which we're all aware of.
Yeah.
They used to basically showcase, they didn't necessarily always show the game. Sometimes they did, but they had like a Sunday show which kind of showed you what's happening on the table, etc. And I would follow with my list of fixtures. I'd follow Juventus's scoreline and I'd write it there manually,
Okay.
just so that I know how they're doing on points and where they are on the table.
All right, that's quite a tedious process in those years. In comparison, what we had here in the 90s was English football was always big in this part of the world. That's got to do with our colonial masters. We share the same colonial masters. So, because of that, English football is always widely followed. So, we had it weekly. We had weekly highlights of the English Premier League. We had weekly highlights of Serie A as well, because for the reason you stated, it was the biggest league in the world at that time. So, weekly highlights of the English League and Serie A. And if we needed to watch a live match, we would put out our antenna and we'll watch it on either Indonesian TV or Malaysian TV, or once in a while, sometimes on the local Singaporean TV channels, we might get an odd game here and there live. And then as the decade progressed, we got access to more games on local TV, and we had teletext. So teletext gave us the usual daily news of what's happening, what the scores were after every match week, and newspapers as well. Yeah. So that was how it was in Singapore in comparison to how it was in India. So you say you're a Juventus fan. How do you become a Juventus fan?
Russ, it's such a funny story. I think it was the year 1995, maybe. I was I was in Delhi and I was just traveling. I was at my cousin's house. It was summer for me. I just finished my board exams. I just finished exams and I'd just gone there for the summer. And this was 96. I'm not very sure of the year 95, 96. Juve had just won the Champions League that year. And I was catching a snippet on Gillette World Sport, which was a 30-minute sports recap program that would appear on Doordarshan every Saturday or Sunday. The day was Sunday. My cousins were busy. I had nothing to do. I put the TV on, and I'm just watching this team in a blue and yellow, very sharp kit. And also there is an affinity for the color blue already because I'm an Italian football fan now.
Yeah.
Since Italia 90, I'm a fan of Roberto Baggio, Toto Schillaci, and suddenly there is this team, with this amazing Sony mini disc logo with yellow stars. And I'm like, wow, that is a very fancy jersey. I'm already an Italian fan. this team is from Italy. I like the sound of the name. I love the way the kit looks. I said I love this certain bald gentleman, with the jersey number 9. His name is Luca Vialli, and I'm like, and they play really sharp football. And then I see Marcello Lippi on the byline, in this long trench coat, smoking a cigar, and I'm like, this is my team. Like this is the Godfather's team. This is the team. Uh, and what happens is, I think I saw them 1 week apart, or 2 weeks apart. So it was the semis. So I saw the semi highlights and I saw they did really well. And then I saw the final highlights and I see them lift the cup, and I'm like, this is really my team. Um, and still it didn't really hit the ground running, but it was there. It got planted. And the year after, and I see them again, and I'm like, man, their jerseys just get better. And this time I see them in black and white, and I see them, with the thick black and white Sony mini disc logo stripes, and I'm like, this is very sharp. And at that point in time, there's this gentleman with flowing long locks, and I'm like, who's this guy? Who's this number 10? And who can do magic with the ball? And I'm like, and his name is Alessandro Del Piero. It sounds like an artist, and I'm like, I mean, like a team that it looks like written and created by Mario Puzo, and then they dress a certain way, and then you have a guy who's leading them who sounds like an artist. And I was like, and I'm a creative person by nature, and I'm like, this is meant to be. And sure enough, they were bombarding their way through the 90s. Really, for me personally, the team of the 90s, um, especially the latter half of the decade.
Yeah.
And I think from that moment it just stuck. And then I'd do everything to follow them. I'd follow Gillette World Sport. Then I'd follow Rai at night. Rai sometimes would show the games, so the big games I would get to see Juve.
Mm.
And I'd know their fixture list in advance. We could take a printout and keep it with me. And
Mm.
then, one thing led to another. And I think the resolve and the passion got that much greater because the mystery was that much greater. You didn't
Mm.
really get to see them, week in and week out. And, owing to that mystery, you just got more passionate. And you're like, I have to conquer this. What is this forbidden fruit? I just don't
Yeah.
have access to it. And and I think since then, the passion and the resolve has just been so strong, and the intent has been so passionate that I don't spend a weekend without Juve. Yeah.
Okay. What's your highs and lows as a Juventus fan?
Oh, Russ, there are too many as a Juve fan. Too many. I often tell my wife that she never has to worry about. If you're a Juve fan, you're a loyal guy because you've been through a lot, and you're not going anywhere. So I think for me, the 90s were really a high point. Seeing that team at the time that we sold Zidane, I really, I had like a huge like pain in my heart because I was a huge Zidane fan, and he was already the magician that we know him to be today. But when he got sold, and then we suddenly bring in the likes of Thuram, the likes of
Fine.
Nedved, like Buffon. I'm like, how do you buy these three guys for one guy? I mean, that is very smart business by Moji. And I see that the team is more compact, it's sharp, it's working better, like clockwork. Lippi still around. I think those moments were very in hindsight, significant highs and lows because Juve has never been about one player, it's been about the collective. So we've learned to always get past player sales or players ending their career. I think obviously the low for me was whatever happened in 2006. I think it is very unfortunate. Of course, it's it lost Juve a little bit of time that they perhaps did not deserve to lose. And I think that being said, Juve being Juve, it's DNA, right? Like it's in their DNA to fight back, to rise from the ashes, to come back, and within a couple of years become the team that we knew to dominate again for a decade. I think again the highs in that were coming really close to a treble twice and
Mm.
not achieving it. That was the high and the low for me together.
Mm.
Those teams were really, really good, especially the team that lost to Barca. Very, very unfortunate, in the way that they lost. I feel like that team deserved a Champions League. On the whole, as a Juve fan, Ras, it's very hard to tell you, but I've been through 5 final losses, over a span of 25 plus 30 year, 20, it will be Ras 30 years, as a Juve supporter. So in those 30 years to see 5 finals is quite a bit,
Mm.
So that it's also like loss that you comprehend, and as you grow older, it hurts you less, but it still hurts, because you've been there, you felt it. I think that for me is that one thing that I need to see my Juve lift the Champions League. I've seen Italy lift the World Cup. I've seen Italy lift the Euro. So that memory is very deep. Now, if they don't win it till the rest of my time on earth, I'm okay. But Juve not winning the Champions League will leave me a little heartbroken.
Mm.
So yeah,
It could happen. It could happen, but probably not so soon because Juventus
yeah.
is going in a bit of a flux at the moment. As you can see, I'm also a big Italy fan, and from after Italia 90, actually, I was too young to catch Italia 90. So 94 was my first World Cup. Baggio, Schilacci, favorite players. Baggio is my all-time favorite player.
Likewise.
Yeah, and due to Schilacci, actually, I became an Inter fan. So I'm your rival, your arch enemy, your
There we go.
nemesis. Yeah. So yeah, so I'm on the other side of the spectrum where we have seen you lost the finals and we've quietly enjoyed it a bit. Yeah. So I know you would have enjoyed us getting hammered in the Champions League final recently, but that goes with the rivalry, isn't it?
Ras, for me, yeah, Calcio Charcha, we have Param. I don't know if you've interacted with him. Fabulous guy, fabulous host, very analytical mind, our in-house Interista. So, on the chat, I was telling him, when Inter got to the semis, I was like, I'm okay if they win in the semis, but after that, please know, I'm not supporting them in the final. I don't care about the Serie A. I don't care about the coefficients. You're not going to be getting my support. You have all my love and respect as the guy that you are, but there's no support for Inter,
Yeah.
So it's Russ, to be honest, I feel like the game has changed so much over the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
The mystery has been lost. I
Yeah.
feel like that rivalry has lost its intensity as well. I think, for a large part in the turn of the decade, Juve's domination also has been so intense. You've
Mm.
never really seen it as a rivalry per se that it used to be in the late 90s when
Yeah.
Ronaldo was around. I think at
Yeah.
that point in time, the rivalry was very intense for me.
Yeah.
Today, it doesn't have the same. Yes, of course, if we win, we celebrate it. But I think Inter's gone through their own phase in the last 2 decades. They've gone from Pazza Inter to Inter with resolve to again Pazza to again resolve. They've had those short
Yeah.
stints. And Juve's had long, long channels of domination. And in that time, nobody has been able to compete. So when you
Mm.
see the Juve Milan rivalry and you see the Juve Inter rivalry, you see that traditionally they mean a lot, but in today's time, either Milan is doing well and Juve is not, either Inter's doing well and Juve is not. So they've
On
never
par.
both been in a good time, It's
Yeah.
always been cycles. So when Inter's been doing well, Juve's not been doing well. And it's not really been a rivalry to speak of, in that the mystical sense, you
Mm.
know. Funnily enough, I think when we were in touch, I actually just came back from my trip, and the start of the trip was in Italy. I went to see Juve Milan.
Okay.
Um, so it was a family trip. We saw it at the J Stadium. It was a fabulous experience. My second trip to the J Stadium. I've been before in 2018
Mm.
when Ronaldo and Dybala were leading the line. I got to see Juve Bologna. So yeah, so just trying my best to be close to the club. I was very indifferent to where they are at this moment in time in their cycle. But Juve is Juve, for a fan. And
Yeah.
uh, going in and taking in that experience was magical and mystical. So yeah.
True. And that's a nice segue to today. What's the following like of for Serie A football in India?
Raj, to be honest, India is a very chaotic country in terms of culture of sport. There is the diaspora that is intense about cricket. There's a diaspora that's intense about hockey, kabaddi,
Mm.
football. But I think where football is, the easiest way to find support is जो we say in India, जो दिखता है वो बिकता है.
Mm.
And the Serie A is invisible. It's
Yeah.
almost like we're back in the 90s when I used to just sit with my printout. We have nobody broadcasting the league. We
Yes.
had
Same.
till last year. We had an app called GXR. They are now bought over. So waiting for that transition to happen. Absolutely chaotic. There is now an app called The Zone that was showing this league. The league then officially announced that they'll be streaming matches on YouTube. One match day in Ras, they pulled it down. No further
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
announcements made.
Same.
So yeah, how can you expect new fans to come into the league when they don't even know what the league looks like or feels like? There's no
Mm.
pre-game show. The only time that Syria was well packaged was when Juve bought Ronaldo, and Sunday Ronaldo's there, so you're packaging the league a little better. You have a pre-game show. You're making sure there's visibility. None of that exists today. Juve is struggling. The league kind of struggles as a result. Also, I feel that when you look at the 10 poles, Inter had a very up and down season towards the end of last season. They're coming back up today, but there's no real dominant team to create a brand space for Syria. And as a result, what's happening is there are no broadcasters that are showing any kind of interest. There are still very decent players there, Ras. I speak as a purist. I'm sure you do as well. We follow the league out of passion, but if you were to speak to a person coming into the game today, they have absolutely zero interest in Syria. Zero. There is only the Premier League. I mean, even the Bundesliga doesn't get that kind of share of voice. The La Liga, of course, is no longer what it used to be with Ronaldo and Messi, but it's still very prominent because both Madrid and Barca are very strong teams, in a European context, even
Yeah.
today. So you do have followers and their fan clubs, but I speak purely in terms of new fans coming into the game. There's zero exposure to Syria.
Mm.
So, you will not really see too many new Indian, Juve, Inter, Milan fans coming through.
So most of the following in India of Serie A fans, they originate from the 90s and the noughties.
Oh, not necessarily. The Serie A would be the 90s for sure, early 2000s, but also the Ronaldo era, because
Okay.
there's a lot of kids that picked up. Today, when I see a kid wearing a Juve jersey, I know it's because he started following them at the time of Ronaldo. So
Mm.
that time there was a huge influx because a lot of exposure to the league, but not just the Northeast, Russ. There is across, there's a lot of Juve fan following in Mumbai, but again, it's linked to the 90s. There's
Mm.
Juve fan following in Delhi, there's Juve fan following in the South, but it's all linked to the 90s, at least, the old school fans in many ways. If I was to draw a parallel, it would kind of suggest what has happened to Manchester United
Yeah.
after Sir Alex Ferguson. You'll find a lot of the older fans are Man United fans. There are no new Man United, there are new Man City fans for
Yes.
sure. But it's what keeps them relevant, right? So you won't
Yes.
find a young kid who's a United fan today the way you used to back in the day.
Yeah.
So it's the same with the Italian league, pretty much.
So it's very much English. So you even in the sense of just football coverage in purely just football coverage. So you would say now there's greater coverage of football in India and of course greater popularity for the English Premier League because now you see it endorsed even by Bollywood celebrities. They are also endorsing the Premier League. Not sure that is organic or paid endorsement, but you just do see greater eyeballs.
Plus, it's a mix of both. Right here, you find a lot of Indian Bollywood celebrities who have a natural affinity for, let's say, a Chelsea. Abhishek Bachchan, for example, Amitabh
Yeah.
Bachchan's son is a Chelsea fan. Arjun Kapoor is a Chelsea fan. Ranbir Kapoor is a Barca fan. So that natural affinity is something that becomes very easy for that club to get in touch and use this person as an influencer. You know, there is no such influencer for, at least from
Correct.
Bollywood, for the Italian league. You know,
Yeah.
Shah Rukh Khan was a huge Roberto Baggio fan.
Mm.
He was an Italy fan, but today I don't know how relevant that is, you know.
Mm.
So that's really the space that we're in. That's what we're competing and contending with. I think Inter had a very good opportunity last year, if they had won the Champions League,
Yeah.
to kind of create that space for Italy again. But of course, they came up against a supreme PSG team. But you'll see, Ras, even though the French league is not all that much and it's not as
Yeah.
visible, PSG is a very visible team because they've had the likes of Neymar in recent history. Messi came and played for them, and now they won the Champions League in such dominant fashion. So you'll
Mm.
see a lot of PSG jerseys on the street, you know. So there's
Yeah.
only two real ways to make an influx and inroads into this is either you are dominant like how Juve was dominant for these 9, 10 years, then the Italian league becomes synonymous, or you're dominant in Europe. Even if they're not showing the league, if Juve, Inter, Milan go on to win the Champions League, everyone will stand up and take notice and say, I should be watching this league.
Yeah.
So there is knowledge around Serie A, like not just Calcio Charcha. There's a lot of influencers we interact with. They are aware because they need to talk to us about our league, so they are informed. But
Mm.
and they also come from a certain standing in terms of they're not brand new to the system. There are
Mm.
influencers who are brand new to the system, but they're not as well versed with, Serie A, at least the way you and I are conversing. Certainly not. They
Mm.
would know Serie A in the context of maybe what has happened in the last 3 to 4 to 5 years. That's really
Mm.
it.
Okay. Is there any myths that you want to bust about the Indian football fan? Any myths or stereotypes that you've heard about Indian football fans that you would like to bust? I remember recently, probably you guys had released a video on this topic. I found it quite interesting.
Uh, I think Russ, there's just one in context that I look at is a lot of people seem to think that Indian football fans, because the state of football in India, only tend to follow like European clubs and they aren't interested in the local scene.
Mm.
But they couldn't be further from the truth, because if you look at Kolkata, you look at Kerala, you look at Goa, and you look at the Northeast, the kind of fan following, Ras, the passion, the intensity, it's the same. Of course, they'll pray to a statue and a godlike figure of Ronaldo and Messi, and they'll do pujas. But in the same way, they're as passionate and attached to their clubs in the same exact way. There is no difference. And I think that understanding is something that a lot of people miss out on. And I think as our influencer culture explodes, a lot of people will understand that Indian fans are actually very knowledgeable and analytical about the game. Like I was telling you, I'm sure yourself, as an Inter fan, on our board also, the likes of Ajay, Chintan, and Param, they support Roma, Milan, and Inter respectively. Very analytical minds, and I'm someone who's probably the oldest fan, but I'm not as analytical as them.
Yeah,
I'm just
that's
a
true.
dinosaur, so they're happy to have me around. But the way they break down the game is fabulous, fabulous. And I think a lot of that also comes because of that understanding of the game. They're able to kind of relate that to the Indian scene as well. And in India, what's happened, Ras, is it's so unfortunate because, of course, Reliance, credit to them because they've come in into the grassroots and they're trying to, build the game the way cricket has developed in India. They're trying to create that same infra to get people in early into the space, that funnel, so that they get the right nutrition, the right infra to kind of develop their game, right exchange programs.
Mm.
We have now clubs coming in, for camps and then staying beyond that to develop talent. India, it has absolutely no excuse for actually putting out a team, that's capable of, if not competing in the World Cup, but being at the World Cup. There is no excuse for a population that we have and for the scene that we've created with our cricket. Why can't we reflect that and do that with our football? It's not a hard sport to break into. If
Yeah.
people consider barriers to entry, India is actually much easier. Cricket is more expensive. You need to buy pads, you need to have gloves, you need to have a bat. That's not cheap, for the
Yeah.
average child from a humble background going into the sport at such
Mm.
an early age with no means, maybe coming from a small town. But football, there's no excuse.
Mm.
And I think when you see that and you see what we've tried to create with the ISL, it's still the ISL is also lagging. We tried it. We brought Del Piero's. We brought, people. They're playing across big franchises. I think Bengaluru is one such franchise, is really professionally managed and handled, and credit to them from that perspective. I think the way that talent has broken through is if you look at the likes of a Jingan or a Sandhu, Sunil Chetri, of course, all of
Yeah.
us know.
Yeah.
Um, but my point is that like the talent is there. It's just a matter of that opportunity being consistent, of that opportunity being long drawn out. And I think of that infrastructure coming in early, and I think developing that talent, because what happens, Ras, is predominantly we don't have a sporting culture like, let's say, Australia.
Mm.
We have a cricket culture. We don't have
Yes.
a sporting culture. So what happens to a kid who kind of comes in from a humble background, who's due to get a government job? He knows football's not going to pay him in the long run. So somewhere along that wagon wheel, he's going to drop off and then go get that government job, or go get a salary that, in a private firm, because he has to support his family. So you need, to create that infrastructure where a child comes into the system, then stays in the system till they turn 15 or 16, and then go abroad on an exchange program, develop yourself, you know, and then come back, you know. Sandhu, for example, our goalkeeper, has actually had Europa League experience, you
Yeah.
know. So he's gone and developed himself and come back, and very solid player. So what we need is to create more opportunity for Sandhus like this to go out there and get noticed. Sunil Chetri, I mean, the guy's a phenomenal talent. Of course, he's so over documented that, like, not spoken about.
Yeah.
So my point is that, like, when you look at like someone like that with the natural talent, went out, got developed, came back, still there, prominent. You need players like that who can stay in the system. You develop them so that they're there in the long run. The Indian team is not just a matter of talent, it's also a matter of consistency. You need consistency to qualify for a World Cup. In a 2, 3, 4 year cycle. If you're going to have a new team every 3, 4 years, and you have a new coach, it's a very, very poorly managed scene, very, very poorly managed. It's very unfortunate, and I think we've reached a point where we had a very poor debacle that occurred when we lost 2-1 recently. Um, there are no excuses, Ras. And I think we've come to a moment in time where that realization has to be that if you want to compete, you need consistency, you need continuity. You don't
Yes.
just need talent. The talent is there, you know, but you need to develop that talent
Yes.
consistently and continually.
Too much chopping and changing. In fact, this story is repeated all across Asia. A lot of Asian countries have the
Very
same
true.
issue. They are looking for the quick fix, quick success, quick fix, and it doesn't happen. They chop, they change, chop and change, chop and change. But the best example of it comes from Japan. The consistency that they've shown in their program has now reached to a stage where they can play against the big boys of world football and beat them. So that
Absolutely,
probably
Raj.
is the best example for the rest of Asia to look at.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I'm also now seeing that with China. I feel like they're not there yet, but I think they've become so aggressive because, when they brought the likes of Lippi and Cannavaro, it was just a start because, of course, they got Lippi at the end of his tenure as a coach and whatever. But that mindset has now come into the philosophy, and they're developing very rapidly. The same with Korea, you know.
Yeah,
Um, you can
Korea.
kind of see there is continuity in their program. The players are now reaching the likes of the Italian league, the Premier League. You're kind of seeing that consistency is there, that exposure is there. I think Indian football, if it just gets the continuity, I think very easy to kind of find the talent that okay, we may not ever have a Cristiano Ronaldo level of player from India, but you can have very functional, efficient players that can make a name for themselves in the European leagues, functional, efficient players who can, as a unit, represent India at the World Cup, and very respectfully so. So I think, given that, I feel like India just is in shambles at the moment, and they need to put the pieces together and make it happen.
And I think for India, it's a very good example in the history because in the 1950s, India was one of the best in Asia.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they played
yeah.
in international tournaments barefooted as well. I think well documented that part of history. So there's something to look back to for India. And it's at least some history, something that you've achieved in the past. So hopefully with and also with the population you have at hand, certainly you can form a good Indian team.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
just before you go, I just want you to name your all-time Juventus 11.
Ah, interesting. My all-time, can I do an all-time that I may or may not have seen, or does it have to be an all-time that I've seen?
I think to be fair, let's go with the one that you have seen.
Can I have a couple of special mentions also? Because there
Sure,
are
sure.
certain names
Yeah.
that, have to be there.
Yeah.
So, of course, in goal, it would be, you know who, Gianluigi Buffon, of course. I think for me, on the right, I would have Lilian Thuram. In the center, it would be Gaetano Scirea and Giorgio Chiellini. And okay, maybe even take Cannavaro if I had to give a special mention. On the left, it would be a hard one between Cabrini and Zambrotta. I'm playing a 4-3-3.
Okay.
Um, of course, in the middle, this is probably the easiest bit. I'd have Pirlo, I'd have Platini, I'd have Zidane.
Wow.
Platini, of course, being someone I've not seen play. A special mention, of course, to Edgar Davids. And then in attack, there would be Del Piero, Baggio, Trezeguet. Special mention, of course, has to be said, Ronaldo. But yeah, that would be my team. And of
Okay.
course, if you need a bench, we could have the likes of Nedved, we could have the likes of Camoranesi, we could have the likes of Didier Deschamps. And in attack, you could have Dybala, you could have Higuain, you could have Ronaldo, etc.
Inzaghi, you got Inzaghi
Like,
playing.
of course,
Yeah.
Ras,
Vialli,
it's very funny.
Ravanelli. Oof.
Uh, for me, Inzaghi was someone I didn't really appreciate till I grew up and matured as a fan. I didn't appreciate him at his time at Juve, because I always was like, this guy just scores tap-in goals. What does he do to the rest of the game? And then when you play the game and you understand the game a little better and you become a little more mature, you're like, no, that is a talent, and that is a very unique talent. To be there off the ball, to find that position, where the ball is going to drop right in front of goal is a talent to itself. And I actually really started appreciating him, at his time in Milan. Unlike when he was at Juve. But today I look back and I feel like Filippo is, a very worthy player, definitely.
Certainly. And I think from the 90s, there were so many names. You mentioned a
Oh,
lot.
too many, too many, too many.
Too many. There are too many great names that played for Juventus. Vieri had a spell at Juventus. Alan
Bobo,
Boxic,
of course, of course. Oh,
Ravanelli.
and he was fabulous. It was a very short 2 year spell where he was fabulous. Monji moved him on, but I regret. Salas was there for a very small time.
Salas, yes, Salas was
He
there as
didn't
well
do
in
much.
attack.
And Salas was actually the best number nine of that 2 year stint. On the back of what Zamorano was doing with Inter, Salah suddenly came and he was killing it with Lazio.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he didn't get the time. And funny story, actually, Marcelo Salas was being used as a pawn in the deal to get Cristiano Ronaldo from Portugal the first time before he went to Manchester United.
Okay. Okay.
Juve had the deal in place, the numbers were agreed, but Salah refused to move. And that's why the deal fell through, and that's got him.
Okay.
Funny story.
Oh, that is interesting, and that's Juventus's loss at that time was United's gain.
Of course, of course,
Yeah.
of course.
All right, Dhananjay, thanks a lot for being very generous with your time to speak to us and share with us in extensively on the history of football in general in India in the 90s and also following of Serie A then and now, and also on Indian football. I think that was really nice to know, good to know for us. about what the state of Indian football is right now, and wishing Indian football all the best as well. Hopefully, wishing you all much progress in your football, and to the whole Calcio Charcha community, I think much progress, and keep up the good work.
Absolutely, Ras. Absolute pleasure having connected with you. Looking forward to connect with you again, maybe later this season as
Yeah,
we see teams develop. Inter, credit to you, is looking good. Better than I actually thought they would, given how they ended the season. I thought there was a little confusion with the
mm,
appointment of their new coach. But I think it's all shaping up very well for Inter, in spite of the early loss to Juve. And I think for Juve, just to sign off, I feel like they're in such a vicious
flux.
cycle. It is a flux, so to speak, and I know you would relate because Inter's been through it, Milan's been through it. Um, and I think hopefully, they make the right changes at the top, because you can't keep changing a coach every season. That is not the root of the problem. The problems are much deeper than that.
Yes.
And
It's
hopefully,
similar to what my English team, United, is going through. So I
yeah,
can
pretty
relate to
much.
that as well. Yeah.
Pretty much that's
Yeah.
because there are certain players that I feel like we bought and sold that do brilliantly when they leave Juve. The
Yes.
likes of Nico Gonzalez, recent example. So I think there is something within the club that needs to change by way of structure, by way of hierarchy. It can't be that the problem is only with Tudor and Motta and the players, and the Openda can't be a poor player. David can't be a poor player. Something has to change at the top, for it to start clicking again. But of course, I mean, fingers crossed, it's in Juve's DNA. We
Yeah.
spent a decade of
That's what
dominance.
I'm always afraid about for Juventus. So I know they will come back.
It's in the DNA, Ras. But you don't know when. Like for me, I feel as a Juve fan, this is the longest we have not won a Scudetto. It's been now we're into our sixth year. Since I've started following Juve, there's never been a 6 year
Okay.
spell. It's just
Okay.
that I've been spoiled by the 9 year spell. So, I don't mind the waiting. Like it's not tiring me out or making me lose interest. But it is time, this is actually one of the longest spells that Juve has not won, so something needs to change.
Mm. Okay. I wouldn't say all the best to Juventus because of the rivalry, but still,
Sure.
I wish you all the best in your life, Dhananjay. So yeah, do keep in touch. We'll be in touch.
And
Hopefully, we'll do another show with
for sure.
some other of your buddies as well on the show.
Most certainly. Most certainly. We'd love to have you on a Calcio Charcha episode as well.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime, just let me know. I'll be there.
Sure. Sure. Sure,
Okay.
us.
All
All
right.
right.
Cheers. This is
Pleasure.
Raj signing
Cheers.
out. And
Sure.
happy Deepavali.
Likewise. Happy Diwali to you and all your viewers and everyone at
All
home.
right. Cheers. Bye.